Welcome everybody, I'm Santiago Kneeland and this is The Divine Within, the invisible connection with God. Today we're going to talk about human institutions. It's one of the most fascinating and complex aspects of human evolution, our institutions, government, religion, and the emerging vision of global unity. Joining me is Ryan McGuire, writer, philosopher, and social theorist whose work explores the spiritual and evolutionary forces shaping civilization. He's the author of One World Government and One World Religion, books that invite us to reimagine humanity's future through the lens of divine revelation, moral progress, and spiritual truth. Drawing from the Urantia book and his own deep research into social evolution, Ryan bridges philosophy, faith, and history, challenging us to see how great human experience of governance and religion are not just social constructs, but reflections of a divine blueprint unfolding through time. Thanks for joining us, Ryan. It's a pleasure having you here.
Thank you for having me, Santiago. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So we're going to talk about a topic which is very practical. It has to do with our daily lives and how we are evolving into these institutions and how we create them. So let's begin in this first segment with the social evolution from chaos to civilization. So in our first segments, we're going to trace the origins of human government, born from chaos, sharpened by struggle, and refined throughout the quest for order. What began as a tribal's survival slowly became civilization's great experiment, learning to balance freedom and structure individually and the common good. So, Ryan, what can you tell us about this social evolution, how we're evolving from chaos to order?
Well, I believe that this primitive struggle is still with us today, just in a more sophisticated form. Early governments were focused on protection, defending tribes, managing resources, and keeping order. Today, nations still do the same thing, but through bureaucracy and politics instead of through brute force. You can still feel the survival instinct when governments compete for power and information and control information and justify actions in the name of security. The difference is that now we have the ability to recognize these institutions and evolve beyond the fear-based leadership that we have historically been subject to.
So that's interesting. You're talking about an evolution that started with a very primitive instincts in the clans and how we would protect ourselves from the unknown, from the other clans. And then slowly but surely that evolves into larger clans and they form together and that kind of makes maybe a township, a city, and then we take it all the way into a nation. So in a sense, or in a way, our foundations are based on these fear, or maybe not fear, or maybe born out of fear, but really the sense
Survival
of protecting.
instinct.
Yeah, exactly. That's the word, the survival instinct. And how can we trace that, or what can we say about ours? In the modern times, about those traces that are still within our civilization, I think are still present and not contributing to the overall harmony, let's say, of civilization.
Yes, they still exist and they still influence government and society. But again, we're moving past the fear-based element of it, and we're becoming more aware of our need for one another and the need to move beyond war as a means of bridging nations. We need to unify consciously as an effort that is motivated by our own intellect instead of just animal evolution.
That is true, and I mean, you're pointing out of the animal instincts, and a lot of what people say is then the actual nature of humankind is, I mean, they see that there's a primitive struggle, like you're mentioning, within the systems of governance. I mean, and the way that you're talking about the bureaucrats of the system. So I mean, how can we break from those traditions or those, I mean, it's in within our nature. How can we break from there and move from that primitive struggle into a more organized system?
Again, historically, was through war that this
Okay.
was established. It's one of the great ironies of history. War forces humanity to organize and innovate and cooperate in ways that peace never did. It brought about advances in technology, medicine, and almost all of our social structure. But the real value wasn't in the destructive value, it's in the unity and innovation that arises from it.
Okay.
War is a harsh teacher, showing us the cost of division and pushing us even painfully toward a higher form of cooperation. The challenge now is learning to achieve that same growth without the the next global conflict that would force our hand into a unified government.
And you're saying about unity, and it's interesting. Maybe 20 years ago we would think about a large scale conflict, and it might be something that's unimaginable. Maybe not as we would think of World War I or World War II. But now we're in a stage, and you've come to think of it, and we're so far advanced in technology. We have AI and we have everything, but now we have the Ides of March. The sounds of conflict and war at bay. So how can we, or is there a way? I mean, you're saying that paradoxically, war advances civilizations. And first, I mean, I have two questions here. How can something so destructive also be a force for social progress? Number one. And if not war, what other mechanism can we use in a modern civilization to advance this in such a way? So there's two questions there.
Well, firstly, it forces us to advance because, again, our survival instincts will form the administration and the government and the hierarchy that is necessary to engage in war most effectively against our opponents. So, in doing that, it creates structure and civilization, which is the positive aftermath of war, building that civilization. Which is it's ironic that it requires the conflict initially in order for us to be propelled to the point where we form government and administration. But it's the case, and so if we move past that and we are able to not use conflict as the means to evolve toward a unified government, it would be from conscious cooperation. The next great leap won't come from conflict, hopefully, but from a shared understanding of purpose. Humanity has already proven that it can unite under pressure. Now it has to learn to unite under choice.
Okay, that's interesting.
The next phase of human evolution will be driven by spiritual evolution, people awakening to the realization that we are one family bound by a common destiny. When that happens, progress will come not through survival or conquest, but through conscious creation of a just and unified world.
That's an interesting take, and I mean, with what you're saying, and especially, I mean, we're talking about war and the paradox, of something so destructive, but at the same time, it advances civilization, and I think collectively and individually. I mean, without taking into consideration all the trauma. But there's one thing that it has been very an interesting conclusion, or an interesting thought about why people, the combatants are fighting. If you take any soldier from any country and you ask them, okay, what are you fighting for? Why are you struggling, or why are you killing somebody else? And I mean, anybody would say, oh, it's because of country, it's because of the ideal, it's because of this. But in the bottom line, basically all of them, I was fighting so that my buddy wouldn't die. I was trying to protect my buddy, so it forms a camaraderie, in that you're trusting your life to the one next to you. So I see there's this, like you were mentioning, this social progress, this, unification, or this unity in a military unity that is unparalleled. You know, that bridge or that bond that creates that is created by war is something so human in a way, you know, so loving in a way, but within this paradox. So I've always seen that as something very interesting about the consequences of war.
It is. And it goes to the heart of who we truly are. We desire family and unity and connection with one another. And that's what you see on the battlefield is brothers in arms who are fighting for one another against an enemy. But herein lies the problem with the ideology of an us versus them mentality, which is taught in nationalism ideology. All of our nationalistic teachings promote an us versus them mentality, which creates the enemy mentality that we have to fight against them instead of seeing that we're just one human family. And I see this as a spiritual issue that will be
Okay.
overcome in time. Um, we're seeing a lot more spiritual disconnection when our society forgets its moral center. The system is guided more by ambition and profit rather than truth and compassion. Individuals, when they stop feeling connected to something greater than themselves, institutions become hollow. They still function, but they lose integrity. And what I have learned is that without spiritual alignment, without awareness of divine purpose, a civilization will continue repeating cycles of corruption and collapse. It's inevitable. It's like trying to steer a ship without a compass at night. Eventually, you're going to shipwreck somewhere. So this is the fault in the nationalism ideology that must be overcome. Continuing this is going to only cause us to further global conflict. It's time to move past the nationalistic ideology toward a unified global government.
No, this is really interesting, and I think you look at the times, and I think that's why we see such a polarization. I mean, I see that there's people that do want to have this change, this evolutionary change in our civilization, but I see that there's a lot of people hanging on to the paradigm, to the world as they know it. And I mean, I've always thought of trade and trading, and that's what really drove civilization. If you look at, the ancient world and the Mediterranean, I mean, all the trading that happened there really bridged everyone and really connected everyone. And if you see the Mediterranean, you see all the in North Africa and the Middle East and Europe, the variety and the diversity of cultures there, of races that trade brought together, and that they basically hit it off and created a very unified ancient world that spun around the Mediterranean. And you see that the most powerful empires came out of that experiment or of that phase in history, of the ancient world. So I see that trade is a very good tool for combating or to stop using war in advancing our human civilization.
Our interconnected global market is one of the strongest proofs that we are ready for a global government. No nation today, regardless of how self-sustaining they may appear, can function at the current level without the global market as we know it. We pump oil out of the earth at the basically the same rate that we burn it. And without that interconnected shipment of oil around the world, it shuts down within a couple of weeks. So this is one of the strongest arguments for a global government that I would make is the trade and energy markets that have been established. I would also say that a lot of secular theories
Mm-hmm.
about evolution are described in a purely material driven sense. Economics, social adaptation. But my perspective adds a spiritual dimension to that,
Okay.
suggesting that civilization isn't just evolving biologically or socially, it's evolving spiritually.
Okay.
Behind every phase of government or social development is an unseen divine influence that is guiding humanity toward unification and enlightenment. From that view, politics and progress aren't random. They are part of
Okay.
a cosmic education process designed to mature the soul of civilization itself as we move continually forward.
So this is interesting. You're saying that there is an unseen divinity or superhuman cooperation that we have among us that is kind of guiding us, steering us, maybe not too blunt or too direct, but kind of, pointing us in the way, right?
Absolutely. There's in my view, there is no question about this. We are all indwelt with this spirit that is guiding us toward unification and toward um, having a relationship with the creator of all mankind. The fact that we have so many world religions is not evidence that they're all wrong and that there is no God, as many atheists would argue. It is evidence that God does exist and we are all trying to have a closer relationship with him. So that is, in my opinion, that is self-evident, but obviously that's not the case with many materialistic and purely science-driven individuals.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And it really, at least in my case, it really calms me and really it reassures me that there is someone, taking care of you. That you have like a big brother. Maybe it's not God Himself, although He is here, but there are other beings that are vested, in us, and that they're really interested in our because we're part of the same universe. So they are interested in our progress and therefore their own progress and in the progress of the universe. So that really comforts me and tells me that there is something beyond this mundane materialistic world.
Well, absolutely. Yes, it's extremely comforting to know that this is simply the beginning of a eternal journey toward perfection and unending progress. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's very sad to me that this is not the perception of so many other people, even
Well,
in world religions. Their perception of the afterlife is rather mundane compared to what I understand to be the unending progress toward um,
yeah.
perfection.
In this next conversation, we turn to the heart of humanity's spiritual story, religion. From ancient temples to modern faiths, religion reflects our deepest desire to know and be known by God. Ryan will help us understand how these evolving belief systems came about. They are diverse and they all point out to the same impulse, which is the divine realization and meaning of our sonship with God. But we also explore the paradox, how institutions mean to connect us with God sometimes obscure the living personal experience of the divine within. So tell us a little bit more of how religions came about, and the because I don't see. I mean, a lot of people may say that religions are the construct of individuals to enslave humanity. I don't see it that way. It has its negative or maybe it's dogmatic and structures that maybe constrict us in some cases, but nonetheless, I believe that they are the best or the greatest attempt of humanity to reach out to God.
I do see religion as being a need of the human soul to connect with a a creator. So this is part of who we are at our core, and we are divinely driven by that spirit that is going to lead us into a relationship with him. If we evolve in different parts of the world in isolation, it is only logical that individual cultures are going to evolve around that basic human need.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the basis of all world religion. They have all evolved independently in isolation, and the individual cultural differences that have evolved around those religions are what we see, which is what we focus on.
The
And
difference is not the similarities, right?
exactly. Instead of focusing on what is at the heart of every world religion, which is a relationship with their creator, we focus on the outward, exterior, what we can see with our eyes visually. This is what we focus on. It is what drives us apart from one another. And then on top of that, we focus on our own religion, which usually dictates an exclusionary principle. Our religion is the one true religion. And so this again is like nationalism creating the us versus them mentality that we are the best, we are better, we are different, they are different than us. So a major leap forward in communication and unification would require an an evolution of thought and the
Yeah.
removal of monopoly and chosen people teachings within world religions. It can't evolve to that point of unity until we're able to discard those antiquated ideas that keep us separated,
And fighting each other. I mean, in throughout history, we
endlessly
see,
fighting each other.
yeah.
Correct. Yes.
I mean, I see like the Protestant wars between Catholicism and Protestantism, that happened in throughout history. You strip everything out. They were all Christians, they were all thinking, or they were all had Jesus at their center, but it was just fighting on the details, fighting on what. But and it wasn't just an argument. There was a war. I mean, there was a whole conflict in our history, where they basically thought of or had the same concept. Maybe if you're talking about Hinduism and Christianity, there you have a difference, and you might, not that there's a case for conflict, I believe, but you might understand and say, okay, they're opposing views. But in this one, it was basically the same creed, the same prayers, basically, that you had. So I see it, and in that point, it was so. I mean, that was the whole thing in the world. That was the conflict. But nowadays, that's gone. Now we see, you know, the Christian world as one. But now there's these other conflicts within the religions, and we're not going to go into details, and because that's not the point of our conversation. But I do want to stress my view of how I see ourselves as, each of us has a fragment of God inside of him. So if God is giving us, number one, a piece of him to have as each individual, within him, and giving us the greatest gift, which is personality, which makes us unique. It's our unique cosmic fingerprint that will be with us throughout eternity. So if God is giving us that uniqueness, why are we so compelled, as maybe as an evolutionary society or civilization, or why are we compelled to go and try to mold everybody into the same mold, instead of seeing those differences and learning from those differences, and maybe taking all those pieces? I always think about this, very nice mosaic, ancient mosaic of different colors, and you can create this beautiful tapestry of different interpretations of God, because in the end it is God, but it's your own individual interpretation. And the way I also frame it is, I mean, if you have brothers and sisters, it's the same thing as that relationship you have with your parents. They're your parents, but each one has its own way of communicating, of communing with that. So, I mean, those are my thoughts. And what can you tell us about that?
I think I heard you ask a question about why is this being perpetuated, and the answer is because it's what is being taught perpetually from the beginning. And in the beginning, when these religions were being formed in isolation, it was for the purpose of creating a community and an idea of who we are as a people. And
Mm-hmm.
this is what defines us. And this is what makes us different. And this is how we recognize that you are a part of this group of people. And it was, again, out of survival. It was a protective instinct, identifying who your people were and understanding that we all had this same view of life and our creator. But as we move toward an interconnected world and currently live in an interconnected world, heavily interconnected, it no longer behooves us to have these ideas in our religions. It no longer serves the purpose of protecting us from dangerous people in different communities who may be different and want to harm us and take over. It now just reinforces divisive divisions and creates further conflict that prevent us from evolving. I would say that today, as communication and global awareness dissolve these ancient barriers, religion stands on the threshold of its final evolution, meaning
Okay.
meaning that it can transform the competing systems of creator worship into a single shared realization that all paths lead toward that divine center. The
Okay.
history of religion seen through this lens is not a chronicle of separation, but the long unfolding journey of humanity toward spiritual unification.
I mean, I think you put it really clearly. And let me take this analogy or this. And when you're a kid and as you're evolving and go through puberty and into adulthood, I mean, you change, you transform, and you shed those. I mean, although they were there with you and they built with you, you have to discard a lot of the practices that were they were good and they were applicable for a 10-year-old, a 15-year-old, but now that you're a 30-year-old with responsibilities, with certain duties, you have to evolve that. And I think that's what's happening in that sense with religion. At first, like you were saying, it was a thing of protecting, of creating an identity. But now we've come so far, and we're so far evolved in the lifetime of our civilization that those things are not necessary anymore. It's like being a kid. You don't hit anybody now more. You can do that when you're a kid. It's part of being of growing up. But you see a 30-year-old fighting with somebody, it's not proper. You did that when you were a kid.
There's physical maturity that we experience as we grow older,
Exactly.
which is what you're describing in your metaphor, and there's spiritual maturity that evolves over the generations, the thousands of years that these world religions evolve into what they are as we know them today, and it's an ongoing process. Um, and it's time to reconsider some of those ideas that we were taught as children in that spiritual journey.
Yeah. Yeah. That is the case. And one of the things that I understand from what you're saying, in the times that we live, I see it in a lot of the younger generations. They're divested from being in an institutional religion. I mean, they're shying away. And I think that all right, you can formulate your own ideas, you can, go that path, but you need to have a structure. I think that the worst thing that can happen is not to substitute an institutional religion with a personal religion, but to discard it all, and saying, God doesn't exist. And that I see the problem, and what the pitfall that we can fall into, of completely discarding God just because we do not want to be within a certain dogma or a certain a structure, right?
And what I would argue also is that unifying religion into a single global faith does not mean erasing uh, the beauty of diversity and individual cultural differences, but instead revealing the common essence beneath it, the universal truths that every great tradition has sought to express. At the heart of all religions lies the same divine reality that God or the source or the creator is one, and humanity is one family. Love, truth, service, and these are the highest forms of worship. A unified world religion would honor those
Yeah.
traditions toward a unified uh, revelation,
Okay.
blending reason with faith and spiritual experience with moral action. Such a faith would not require the uniformity of rituals
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
doctrines, but it would be a harmony of purpose, a shared understanding
Nice.
of the that the goal of religion is not division or dominance, but the upliftment of mankind toward our spiritual destiny.
I really like this because I mean, what you're saying is that we shouldn't focus on those differences. Differences are always going to be there, but if we look at the similarities, I mean, it all falls into into love, which is you can I see it, love is a center, and then you have truth, beauty, and goodness. As long as you're fostering truth and you're looking for truth, if you're doing goodness in your heart, your intentions, I mean, we're imperfect and we commit mistakes and we err, but if your intention is within goodness, you're trying to bring that out. I mean, eventually you'll correct those wrongs, and and beauty, it's one of the greatest things that we can imitate art. We can, through our art we're reflecting the world that we see. So that's so beautiful that, beauty is something that we admire and we try to imitate. So if we stay, with any religion or any individual that has, as you were saying, this unified religion, which is, like you say, it's not a dogma, it's not going and doing certain rituals, but it's really unifying in heart under these ideals of truth, beauty, and goodness, in my belief.
I agree. And so if I take this a step further than a mere conversation about these divine qualities, we realize that it's important to share these ideas on a global scale. And sharing these ideas on a global scale requires using modern communication, books, media, digital platforms to translate these spiritual truths into every language and culture and symbolism. Education must present the world's religions not as rivals, but as complementary
Yeah,
expressions of divine revelation. Um,
I like that.
Global dialogue among faith leaders and thinkers will help dissolve those prejudices and awaken collective spiritual identities. Through these efforts, humanity will shift religious competition to cooperation and build the foundation of a unified world faith.
I like that. I like that. And now that you mentioned that, I mean, we've been talking about the evolution. We've been talking about the role of religions in our human institutions. You know, the longing for God. But what is the future? What awaits us? You know, you're talking about this unified government. Is that the future of global cooperation? And what does it look like? I mean, you're talking, and this is something that's not new. I mean, ever since I think of you know, the ancient world, even it was trying to unite the world. So, how can we, in this modern times, with all the technology and the communication and in the interconnectedness, why can we do it? Because it's always a possibility, it's never a given. Why is there is today a time, and how to reach this?
Well, it's coming. It's going to take time, but it's definitely going to happen. It's inevitable. Um, Survival dictates that we unify over and over again, in larger and larger numbers. We do this for the sake of peace and security. Eventually, it's going to happen one more time. Um, my goal is to see it achieved before the next global conflict. But eventually, the alignment of spiritual understandings and cross cultures can make a unified world government possible. Shared ethical principles and respect for human dignity. Um,
Dignity, yes.
with a single world religion reflecting the universal truths, societies will act from a common moral framework, reducing conflict and fostering cooperation. Together, a global government and unified world faith will guide humanity toward lasting peace, prosperity, and collective progress.
Awesome. I see that there is a lot of stuff, a lot of work in an individual and collective sense. And one of the things that you mentioned, and I want to touch on this because with this, it's been, you know, a current, a recurring theme in the podcast is human dignity, and that's something that I think we've lost. You know, the modern world, be it as it may, and you know, all the technology and interconnectedness that it brings us, it also makes us a number. We become, you know, a consumer. We become part of the algorithm, and we lose that dignity. We lose the dignity of the human being, and I think that's really it's tragic, and it's really it can be perilous because we are not seeing the humanity in us, but just a number. And I think if the one that I use as a reference to, you know, give that dignity to people, where how can I treat people with the dignity they deserve, has always been Jesus. I think that if you believe in him, if you believe in whatever a way that you believe in him, if you take his example of the dignity he would give to even lepers and you know, people that are deemed undesirables in any society, what does that teach you about or bring about the dignity and the value of a human being?
Yes, and I agree with you completely. Jesus was the perfect model for that. He preached equality across race, religion, sex, everything. Jesus was about equality and unifying us as one family. He never had the intention of creating a cult following with a exclusionary dogma about his life, his sacrifice. So, uh, Jesus wanted everyone to know that they are all intrinsically valuable and loved by our Father. And that was his message. We are all worshiping the same God. Every one of these world religions is evolving from their need to communicate and have a relationship with that one God. And we are all one family. So, importantly, it is necessary that we see human dignity as the inherent worth of all individuals, which must be recognized and protected in all societies. Human rights are the practical expression of dignity, ensuring freedom, equality, and justice for everyone, regardless of race, religion, status, all of that. So again, this is what we are working for as we evolve spiritually.
I like that. I like that. I mean, if we take, I mean, we're talking about the way Jesus really saw humanity, and you were saying something very specific. You know, that kind of turns into nationalism, and also in religion. When we look at it, religion, it becomes, you know, unaccepting, and you know, we have chaos and things like the Inquisition, where people were persecuted and tortured and killed. So here, you know, taking the example of Jesus, and he was the first one that did not consider himself to be just a Jew, and his message not to be just for Jews, it was for Jews and Gentiles, and he took it everywhere. So, you know, 2000 years ago, something that is so common nowadays, you know, about unity and about, you know, getting together, this is something that Jesus told us 2000, not only told us, and this is what I really like about Jesus, and he didn't just talk the talk, he walked the walk, and he showed us in a practical way that value and dignity of the human soul.
Agree with you. Yes, I want everyone to see Jesus as a unifier. Jesus should be seen as the ultimate unifier whose teachings of love and compassion and forgiveness transcend every culture or religious or social boundary. His message calls all people to come together and share their humanity, emphasizing common purpose over division. And that is, again, part of what I write about and what I share with people when I speak.
I mean, and this is if you can take that model of what Jesus did and extract that and live your life by that, I think you're basically halfway in your evolution. And I want to, now that you were mentioning about social evolution, and in your experience, I know that a lot of your work, the source is the Urantia book. So how does the Urantia perspective differ from the secular theories of social evolution and government? What is the difference there from what we normally know?
There are differences. Most secular theorists describe evolution as something driven by survival and economics or social adaptation. Like I was saying earlier, my perspective is also the Urantia perspective, adding a spiritual element to that equation,
To
suggesting that
evolution, to
civilization,
yeah,
right,
in
it's
evolution, right?
right in our
Okay,
evolution. It's not just
exactly.
biological. It is spiritual.
Okay.
This is what the Urantia book is teaching.
You see throughout time, the different generations, how it compounds. You know, everything is compounding. It's not that you're starting with a new person from zero, and that's what you're saying. You know, we have, you know, the physical evolution that happens through a lot of time. But maybe the way that I mean, we can't measure, you know, the material and the spiritual dimensions in the same maybe time frame. But there is evolution, you know, and that's how I see time. That time gives you this structure where you go from potential to actual, from what could be to what is. And I see that that evolution that you're talking about, in which you perfectly stated, it's not only physical. If you look at a human being, yes, we have the natural aging and growth, you know, from infant to an old person, but you know, the spiritual evolution is not a constant, and it doesn't follow rules. It's really personal. And I see that, you know, how it can really, you know, it has that material element and really has an evolutionary spiritual element that we're not seeing, and you're bringing out. And I think this is, for a lot of people, it's the first time they're hearing this.
Yes, you could be right about that, and that is unfortunate. Um, but it is truth, and those who are seeking truth will resonate with that.
Exactly.
Um, what I know, what I understand about history is that religions evolve as their teachings are interpreted, adapted, and transmitted across generations, responding to changing cultures, knowledge, human needs. And over time, those core truths are preserved while practices and rituals and dogmas,
Yeah.
um, they shift, allowing faith to remain relevant and meaningful in every era. But it takes time to overcome many of the practices that are so ingrained over those generations. Why does one person practice a certain religion? Because his parents practiced that religion. Why did they practice it? Because their parents practiced that religion. And if it is passed down for so many generations, it must be true. It must be right.
Yeah. You don't even question it because it was taught to
Right.
you from birth. And that's
Exactly.
really dangerous. And I think in my case, I can talk about my experience. Really, when I started questioning not the reality of God, but maybe the dogmas and the structures that didn't make sense. And when you go beyond them and you see God behind them, it makes it so much simpler. And I remember one of the things that Sandra Reinberg has said in the podcast many times is the freedom from fear, the freedom from, because a lot of what, if you're not careful, what the structures do from institutional religion is kind of frame us, and you shouldn't do this because you're going to go to hell. But when you're good, and maybe not, but when you have good intent and you are not, doing evil work, then those boundaries, those shackles and those cages should be erased so that we're not confined as, maybe cattle, that we need to be herded and controlled. Shoot, if we all, and this is part of what you're saying, if we all have the same religion or the same longing for that loving God, truth, beauty, and goodness, there will be no need for these cages or herd mentality, to confine us and not cause problems.
Correct. And again, this comes back to reaching children at an early, impressionable age, because what you're taught at that age is what they remember. If we can reach children with these teachings at an earlier age, it allows them to absorb those values of compassion and morality and spiritual awareness when their minds are most openable and impressionable. Early guidance helps to instill the lasting foundation that they will need of an ethical behavioral um, sense of connection to something greater than themselves, a sense of community.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so beautiful. And it carries so much responsibility in all, the prior generations in our case, in any generation, the difference between us and animals is that, a horse is born and then 4 hours later is already, running and able. But humans are, a baby is born today. If you do not tend to it, if you not move it, the baby will die. I mean, even movement. So how important it is for us to realize that what we teach children, the ideas, what the scaffolding that we create, especially at that age, is really going to shape the generation. So how important it is that we fill their minds and their hearts as well with these truths, with these values and what we're talking about.
Humans need to be raised with guidance, the right type of guidance, discipline, and they need to be loved in order to develop their full moral, intellectual, and spiritual potential. Proper upbringing shapes that character and instills responsibility and prepares individuals to contribute positively to society when they are older. And we don't see a lot of that. We teach more materialistic values at an early age in our society, at least in America. So
Yeah, and in
those
all
are
of them, I
ideas that,
think. Yeah,
well,
and
yeah, and
it's a
more and more.
general.
I
Yeah.
didn't want to put a label on everybody. I'm going to
Yeah.
claim it.
All right. All right. That's good. Yeah. But I mean, that's something with, we had another conversation with Jimmer, who is a professor, and he's been, teaching for all his life. And he sees that. And he told me, I've seen Asia, it's not, just for in the United States, it's in everywhere, because that's like you were saying, that was part of the evolution where we came from, chaos, fear. But it's time to shed that. It's time to shed our skin and be born again with a new skin and a new perspective of what a unified world is, I believe.
It's something we can't live without, and we won't survive without it if we don't move forward, teaching our children how to relate to one another and live with one another and serve in society and civilization with one another. We're just going to reinforce divisions that ultimately uh, shipwreck civilization. So, um, new teachings should build on the wisdom of the past while addressing the challenges and opportunities of the present. They can guide humanity toward greater unity and moral clarity and spiritual growth, helping individuals as societies evolve together.
That is really nice, and in the end, it all comes down to a brotherhood. I mean, we're not meant, and the world is not meant to operate individually. It's meant to be lived collectively. And I think as long as we're headed there, and I know it's sometimes stressful. It's sometimes maybe overwhelming, and just the burden may overpower you. But evolution is a steady process, slow, but it's steady. So eventually we'll get there, and we can see it. And I think the important thing is to contribute with our individuality, chipping in with our grain of sand, and collectively trying to live the brotherhood of man. So therefore, we can recognize that there is one God who is the Father of all of us, the Creator.
Yeah, so I mean, keep going. True progress in society and spirituality comes slowly as we evolve, but they do come, and they require lasting change, and they require patience and persistence, and again, cultivation within our children. Each small step that we take toward this foundation builds greater transformation, ensuring that this growth is deep and it's stable and it endures for future
Yeah,
generations.
yeah, yeah. It's not broken easily. Yeah. Well, I think Ryan, what we learned in this podcast is that although we can, our foundations might have been through fear, through chaos, because that was what was needed in that evolutionary state of our civilization. We have come to realize that, I mean, there are a lot of things that we need to shed in order to come into this new era and this new time where humanity, as you were pointing out, is not only evolving physically, but it's also evolving spiritually. And as long as we realize that evolution has dimensions, it has a mental, a physical, and a spiritual dimension, then we can understand as a whole where we're headed. And we can understand that, as life is, it has its ups and downs. It has sometimes that is it challenges us, but in the end, everything compounds and creates who we are. Even the misfortunes are fortunes in disguise, I believe. So, anything you want to point out before we close?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for having me on your show. I enjoyed this, and I look forward to coming back and discussing these issues further.
Yes, we would love. I would love to do that because a lot of people are going to be asking themselves, what else, and how can we take this to a practical way? So I'd really love to have you later at another time, and we can bring some practical information to how people can foster this in themselves. So. Thanks for being here, Orion. It was a real pleasure. It's real interesting how even in government there is God, and it has to be God. If not, it's hollow, and it's abusive. So if you take God out of government, we're in a bad situation. So thanks for showing, teaching us that, Ryan. And thanks everybody for participating, for checking us out. I hope you enjoyed it. Like you said, like I always say, only subscribe if you really liked it. You can also point on the notification so you can see when we're coming and when we're gonna put out something. And if you really liked our conversation, share with other people. Tell them that we're having interesting conversations over here and might inspire them as well. So thank you. I'm Santiago Kneeland. This is The Divine Within. Take care and carpe diem. On the Divine Within podcast, we'll share real conversations to help you find a personal connection with God. My goal is to support your faith, growth, and journey toward discovering the divine within yourself. Join us to deepen your faith and spiritual journey.